The Call of Duty franchise has had a lot of things negatively impacting it over the past few years, and I really do feel like one of the main things has to do with some of the games butting heads in ways that they just shouldn't be. So what got me to want to make this video was this recent Charlie Intel post that talked about a rumor that Treyarch apparently is taking Sledgehammer's post-launch maps and putting it in their game instead. Now, I'm not sure exactly how this works, not that Treyarch is sneaking into Sledgehammer Games' studio and stealing the maps. Obviously, that's not what's happening. I'm sure Activision is just kind of mandating it, saying that we want these post-launch maps to come to Black Ops 6 instead of to Modern Warfare 3, and so those maps end up going over to Treyarch's game, even though Sledgehammer made them. But I feel like this isn't the first time we've seen something like this, and I just feel like there's so many instances of different games negatively impacting other Call of Duty games, or even just modes within a Call of Duty itself impacting other modes in that same COD game. It's just constantly happening, and I feel like it just shouldn't be, because this is a AAA studio. Well, these all are AAA studios, a really high budget franchise. A lot of money goes into Call of Duty, and yet this is still happening year after year. This has not stopped for like the past 5 years. I feel like every single game has had massive development issues with all sorts of things happening, and I really thought Black Ops 6 was going to be the game that stops these problems, but it seems like it's not going to stop here. There's just going to be a lot more issues, and I want to kind of go over the history of all of this and talk about how they can possibly fix it going forward. And we will be talking about all sorts of modes, whether it's multiplayer, campaign, or zombies, because yes, all these modes have been impacted with this cycle. So of course, it's fair to mention that even the games before the Warzone era still did have development problems. I mean, a great example is Black Ops 3's campaign. There was just so many things going on behind the scenes that caused that campaign to just not turn out right. And then it happened again with Black Ops 4's campaign. Of course, that just got completely canceled and they did Blackout instead. And then even the multiplayer and zombies modes got heavily reworked throughout the development cycle. And there's even times where we don't really hear about many development issues, like at least we don't publicly know about a lot of them, and yet the game still turns out to have a lot of problems. I mean, World War II was a great example. World War II was a very buggy game at launch. Of course, Sledgehammer did a great job of fixing those bugs and actually turned World War II into a pretty decent COD game once the game was throughout most of its life cycle. But still, even with the game that doesn't have a lot of development issues, there are still problems that can happen. But the year when things started to really get bad was actually 2019. A lot of people are going to say 2020, but technically this all started back in 2019. So I don't know how many of you were actually there for this day, but it was absolutely huge. It was in May of 2019 where they announced that the next Call of Duty after Modern Warfare 2019 is not actually going to be Sledgehammer and Raven's game that they were apparently working on, and instead it's going to be Treyarch's next game. At that point, I think people were calling it Black Ops 5, but we were all expecting Treyarch's next game to be 2021, and 2020 was supposed to be Sledgehammer and Raven's game that they were working on together, which was rumored to be some sort of Vietnam-style Call of Duty game. And most of us didn't really know what to make of this, but of course we learned that it was because Raven and Sledgehammer couldn't agree on certain decisions for the game, and for some reason they were like never able to come to some sort of agreement, so they were very behind on the game. So Activision stepped in and said, Treyarch, you're going to go help them out and finish that game off, which apparently a lot of what they worked on is not what ended up being what Black Ops Cold War was. A lot of people say that they did a lot of work on Black Ops Cold War and then Treyarch stepped in to help it out, but that's not really what ended up happening. I mean, you can clearly tell by how rushed Black Ops Cold War was that a lot of that was new. I mean, they were obviously not working on a Black Ops sequel, so that's what the game ended up turning into. So very clearly, a lot of what was made was originally made by Treyarch within those like 1 or 2 years from 2019 to the end of 2020. But obviously this caused a lot of problems for 2 games, not just 1, 2. Actually, technically this caused a problem for 3 games, which we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first of all, Black Ops 4, massive problems because of this. There was a lot of plans for Black Ops 4's post-launch. A lot of them are rumors, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about them because they're really far out there rumors that don't have a lot of evidence behind them, but there was a lot of rumors of there being even more Ether remakes and even more Chaos maps as well. I mean, obviously the Chaos story didn't truly end there, so there must have been more maps in the working, and there are some like actual assets from Chaos maps that they were probably working on that are in Black Ops 4, and there's one weapon that they actually put into multiplayer that looks very similar to something you would probably expect to see in the Chaos story. So yeah, definitely more planned for Black Ops 4, but even if you forget about all those rumors and all the speculation behind that, and let's say there was actually nothing else planned, and actually what we got was 100% what they were going to end up doing, there was still clearly budget cuts in some way, shape, or form for those last couple maps in Black Ops 4, especially with Alpha Omega and Togler Toten. They definitely could have done more stuff for those maps. Those maps definitely could have had more development and could have been better polished. Maybe there would have been a lot less issues with them. Maybe they would have had actual full ending cutscenes rather than the cutscenes we ended up getting that just weren't that great looking. There's even rumors that most of the Treyarch developers weren't even working on Togder Toten because they had to go work on Cold War, and rather Activision Shanghai, a separate studio working under Activision, was actually told to make the map itself. So that's why a lot of the map does definitely feel different than your usual Treyarch design map, at least in my opinion. I feel like the quest especially just doesn't really feel like the type of quest we're used to seeing with Treyarch's maps. All in all, it's very clear that Treyarch making Black Ops Cold War a year earlier than expected was obviously a negative impact on Black Ops 4's post-launch. And I would also say that the overall negative reception of Black Ops 4 Zombies probably led to that as well. I'm sure if Black Ops 4 Zombies got rave reviews, they would have found more time and put more resources into making those final maps a bit better. But they probably just thought we might as well just move on to the next game because everyone's kind of shitting on our current game anyways, and that's probably also what led to that. But then this whole situation also negatively impacted Black Ops Cold War because this is a game that had to be rushed in under 2 years, and obviously Call of Duty games are not usually made in under 2 years. Now, of course, Treyarch did get some help. Raven Software made the whole campaign, so they didn't have to worry about that. But the multiplayer and the zombies definitely saw some issues. I mean, obviously, looking at D Machine in comparison to Black Ops 4's launch for zombies, or you go back to Black Ops 3's launch even, there's just so much more content to maps like Shadows of Evil and 9 and even like Voyage of Despair compared to D Machine. D Machine felt like such a step backwards in terms of map depth. I know a lot of people liked the map, they had fun with it, but the depth was not there. It was just obviously not there. The Easter egg depth was not there. There wasn't even a boss fight. There was obvious issues with that map in terms of its development. And then the multiplayer was lacking in content pretty severely, to the point where that was one of people's biggest issues with Cold War's launch, was the fact that there just wasn't a lot of multiplayer content. And I personally like Cold War quite a bit. I think the multiplayer got a lot better throughout the life cycle, and it actually ended up being one of my favorite multiplayers ever since Black Ops 4. Actually, I would say my favorite multiplayer since Black Ops 4. Black Ops 6 hopefully is going to beat it out, but at the time, yes, it was by far one of my favorite ones around that time. Definitely better than Modern Warfare 2019, even though Modern Warfare 2019 had a full 3 years of development. It shows you that development time is not everything, obviously. You can still have a great game even if it was made in a short period of time. But it's obviously foolish to think that the game wouldn't have been a lot better had it had more development time. And then it also negatively impacted Call of Duty Vanguard, because that was, of course, the game that Sledgehammer had to make right after this whole thing happened between Sledgehammer and Raven, but they didn't have a lot of time to do so. It was made in about 2 years, maybe even less than 2 years. And again, just like Cold War, it kind of saw the problems at launch. Now, surprisingly, Sledgehammer really were pushing hard, and I really got to applaud Sledgehammer Games because they were able to nail out 16 maps on launch for multiplayer, which is really impressive. But they also did not make a zombies mode. They didn't have the time to make a zombies mode. So what happened? Treyarch had to come in to make a zombies mode, and that turned into a complete mess, probably one of the worst zombies modes to date, and that was, of course, Vanguard Zombies. Now, if Sledgehammer had a proper development cycle, Sledgehammer probably would have made their own zombies mode. They probably wouldn't have had Treyarch come in to make the zombies mode for them, and then the mode would have been probably a lot better. I mean, Sledgehammer made World War II Zombies personally something that I kind of like. I like their World War II mode, and even if you don't like World War II Zombies, it's pretty hard to say that it's not better than Vanguard. It's definitely a better mode than Vanguard, so we probably would have seen something better if it had the full development cycle that it deserved. And then this is also something that could have possibly negatively impacted Black Ops Cold War's post-launch cycle, because of course some of the Treyarch developers had to go work on Vanguard Zombies. Now, we're not exactly sure like how big the group is that was working on Vanguard Zombies and how many resources that took away from Black Ops Cold War Zombies. It's very possible it didn't take a lot of resources away, but the fact that the post-launch for Black Ops Cold War was a lot of just reused assets from campaign, that kind of tells me that they probably didn't have a lot of resources being put into post-launch for Black Ops Cold War, and a lot of the resources were being scattered around to other things, such as Vanguard Zombies, and then of course also Modern Warfare Zombies, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and then Black Ops 6 Zombies. They probably wanted to get a head start on that mode because of course they were at that time expecting to do Black Ops 6 in 2023, which of course later on they find out that they actually get an extra year, so now they don't have to do Black Ops 6 until 2024, but there's just so much going on there because now they also have to make Modern Warfare Zombies a whole open world zombies experience. And again, I don't know how big the group of Treyarch developers that worked on that mode was, but regardless, even if it's a small group, it is still resources being taken away that could have otherwise been working on a Treyarch Zombies project. And the only reason Treyarch had to work on a co-op mode for Modern Warfare 3, which of course was MWZ, was because Sledgehammer didn't have enough time to make a co-op mode because they were being rushed to make Modern Warfare 3. They just made Vanguard 2 years prior, and now they have to make this game within 2 years. How are they going to do that? How are they going to manage to make a full game? And the game ended up being a kind of a mess in a lot of ways. I really enjoy MW3 multiplayer. I think it's really solid. I have a lot of fun with it, but the campaign was easily one of the worst campaigns of all time. I would say probably the worst campaign because it just had absolutely no depth to it. You can tell it was rushed. It was the shortest campaign ever, did not have much story to it, and overall just ended up not being a great experience. The multiplayer was really fun because Sledgehammer had a lot of solid design philosophies in play for that experience. They've been doing a great job with post-launch, probably because their next game isn't going to come out till like 2027. So Sledgehammer has had a lot of time to work on post-launch content because they're not forced into working on their next game so soon. And I thought for sure none of this was going to be impacting Black Ops 6 because Black Ops 6 has 4 years of development time behind it. That is the most amount of development time for any Call of Duty ever. There is no way in hell any other game should be negatively impacting this game whatsoever. But at this point, I'm starting to get really worried that there might be some huge problems coming. And obviously we can't judge it fully because we don't have the full game, but we're hearing a lot of things such as what we talked about in the beginning of the video that just don't sound good. Why does Treyarch need Sledgehammer's DLC maps for their game? Is it because they don't have enough maps being made for post-launch? But why would that possibly be? Well, is it possible that because they are probably working on the next Call of Duty for 2025, the current rumor is that Treyarch is making another Black Ops title the next year after Black Ops 6, which sounds insane. Why are they working on 2 games back to back? I have absolutely no idea. It should be Infinity Ward's game next, but apparently it's not. It's probably going to be Black Ops 7 or something along those lines. Again, it makes no sense why they have to do that next, but it might be happening. And if it does happen, well, then Treyarch is going to have to be working on that game quite a bit so they can get that game out. So does that mean they're not going to have as much post-launch content? And if they don't have enough post-launch content, well, shit, they're going to have to start pulling from Modern Warfare 3's final DLC seasons, which is what's happening, which is why Modern Warfare 3 Season 5 and 6 have had a lot less post-launch maps than usual. It's insane. It's insane that this is happening, but it is. It's crazy, and I cannot believe it. And it's in no way, shape, or form the developers' faults here at all. Like, the developers are not doing anything wrong here. They are just working on the game and going as hard as they can. So a lot of people out there who would like to use the word lazy for these studios, I always hear the word lazy coming up. Like, oh my god, there's not enough maps in this game. Oh my god, they're so lazy. That's just not the case whatsoever. It is not about laziness. It's about the fact that they just are getting really unfair situations being thrown at them for whatever reason, and a lot of them just don't make sense to me. Like, why are the studios having to make these games in these specific orders? Why are we not sticking to the normal 3-year development cycle that we had before that's had some issues here or there happen, sure, but at the end of the day, it was a very clean 3-year development cycle. Each studio works on their own game. They don't work on other games whatsoever. They work on their own games and they stick to that. And so each studio gets 3 years to work on their next game, which should be enough time to make a solid COD experience. And the idea of different games taking maps from other games is now made a lot easier with the Call of Duty HQ. The fact that all these games are now on the same application, it is going to be a lot easier for them to keep doing this. So they can always do this whenever the hell they want. If they want to pull maps from a different Call of Duty game and throw them into other ones, they can do that pretty freely, which is probably what's going to happen with next year's Call of Duty. It's probably going to be taking some maps that are currently being worked on for Black Ops 6 for Black Ops 7, and hell, it might happen even after that. I'm not sure when they're going to stop this whole Call of Duty HQ thing. There's no way it's going to go on forever, but it's making it a lot easier for them to carry over maps and move around assets and reuse content, and I feel like it's starting to just make these games feel too similar to one another in a lot of ways, and I think part of that just really needs to stop. Which this brings me to my next point, because obviously these games in terms of the development are definitely negatively impacting each other in ways that they just shouldn't be, but there's also other problems going on where when you have a sort of system like the Call of Duty HQ and a lot of other ideologies that they've kind of been pushing for over the past few years, it's making these games feel too similar in a lot of different ways, and sometimes it's small ways, but enough small ways can turn into something really, really huge. And just a couple examples, something as simple as tac sprint is something that I just don't think we need in every single Call of Duty, but ever since Vanguard, they've forced tac sprint into every game, and I really don't think tac sprint fits in a Treyarch style Call of Duty game. Playing Black Ops 6, tac sprint doesn't feel good whatsoever. It feels like something that should just be taken out, and I don't think it works well with the Omni movement, but I think because they want all these games to be unified under the same engine and the same application and all connected to Warzone, they want everything to feel more similar. There's some differences here or there, don't get me wrong, but some stuff they just want to stay the same. They want the consistency. But I think this is just a terrible idea because we shouldn't have so much consistency with Call of Duty. I think it's much better for a new experience to come out every year and to kind of blow you away with how different it feels and looks. That's what was so special about Call of Duty from 2013 to 2018, in my opinion. I know a lot of people hated those years for Call of Duty, and I think it's a shame that so many people did, but I think if you had those same Call of Duties released today, I think people would be much more appreciative of them because of how different they were from each other. There was completely new mechanics brought into one game, and then they would completely forget about the mechanic the next year because maybe they wanted to try something completely different. And some of the mechanics, don't get me wrong, didn't work, but some of them did. Some of them were really cool and interesting. And this was not just for multiplayer, but it also happened with zombies. We had very different zombies experience with very different tones, very different feels. And yes, the core formula stayed the same. Multiplayer was still 6v6, zombies was still round based. You kept that the same because that's an important core integral part of the COD formula, but other stuff changed around. The theming, the tone, the setting, the guns, everything else was so different. But I feel like nowadays they're so much more standard in terms of the feel. We have similar guns in most of these games. I mean, there's been an MP5 in every single COD since like Modern Warfare 2019 except for Vanguard, and I'm like so sick of the MP5. They don't feel new enough when we see a new MP5 in a new Call of Duty game. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're forcing these games to be in a similar setting as well. We're having so many Modern Warfare games recently, and even the Black Ops games have been either 80s or 90s, which that's not that far back. I do like the setting, don't get me wrong, but it's not different enough. We deserve to have some futuristic titles thrown in here as well. Hopefully we're gonna get that next year, but there's obviously no confirmation on that just yet. But in general, these games should be a lot different. And also in terms of the story, which I think this is one of the most important things that I'm going to talk about here, because I think the connected universe shit they've been doing since Modern Warfare 2019 is completely killing the story, not only in campaign, but also in zombies. And I really think it needs to stop. And I think they will eventually. I think they're starting to realize that people don't like these storylines being so connected. I think they're starting to learn that, and they're going to start changing things soon. But for now, I think it's just such a problem with some of the more recent Call of Duty games for a number of reasons. First of all, why are we trying to do some Marvel Cinematic Universe for Call of Duty here? That's unnecessary. I think we all know it's unnecessary. It is much more interesting when these storylines are separate and have their own distinct feels and tones. Trying to force them together doesn't make a lot of sense. But it also lowers the stakes quite a bit because these games aren't coming out in chronological order. Therefore, the story is not being told in chronological order, which I'm not against that, don't get me wrong, but I don't think that really works for a sort of story like Call of Duty where it's trying to be very grounded and mostly centered on reality for the campaign itself. You're just not going to have a scenario that makes a lot of sense when you throw in a game that takes place, in the modern day, and then you do another game that takes place like, let's say 10 to 20 years before that. You know that game is not going to end with some world-ending stakes because, well, I mean, shit, how is that possible? I mean, look back at prior Call of Duty campaigns. We had campaigns with World War III going down. We had campaigns with an entire apocalypse in COD Ghosts. We had so many crazy things happening in some of those prior campaigns. You can't do that anymore because we know that those things haven't happened. And also, some of it just doesn't make any sense because Black Ops 2 doesn't really make a lot of sense to take place only like a year or two after MW3. That just doesn't really add up, and it's just unnecessary things that they're trying to force together just to try to make everything connected. And don't even get me started on the zombie storyline. Why do we need campaign characters in zombies? I don't see the purpose of that. If it's a small character that was just there for a little bit, I have no problem with Weaver being in zombies. That's whatever. But they trying to force Soap into the zombie storyline. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? Why is that necessary? And I think their whole purpose, their whole reason for this is they're trying to make every mode in the game feel more connected. They're trying to make every game feel more connected because they want people to be more likely to play every mode and buy every game. But I think that actually almost makes people not want to play every mode or buy every game, because a lot of times people buy new games or play new modes to feel something different, to feel something unique, to get a different experience. And if they go to a separate mode, a separate game, and they just get the same exact feel and tone and characters and story, it might cause them to not be as interested. And for the last part of the video, let's just talk about some of the influence that Warzone is having on some of these other modes. I mean, we've seen it with zombies more than anything. I feel like zombies has really just constantly been getting all these mechanics and features and things shoved in from multiplayer or Warzone into their mode, and they don't really fit. They don't really fit the feeling of zombies. They don't fit the tone of it. A lot of people have been calling this the Warzonification of zombies, and I really can't agree more. I do feel like that has been a major issue with zombies ever since Black Ops Cold War, where a lot of mechanics and features from other modes are for some reason finding their way into zombies when they don't really fit. And you can tell it's not being done because they think it's a great gameplay system. Rather, it's because it's similar to Warzone and similar to other things that those players might be familiar with. And I don't really think that's a great way to get people invested into your game. I think they just want to get immersed into what zombies is itself. You don't have to sell us on how similar it is to something else. Rather, just show me what it is and show me why it's so good and why this mode works on its own. I mean, it would be like if a burger place, like a place that's really known for their burgers, they show up in some sort of town that's filled with a lot of Italians, right? I don't know, a lot of Italians live there, and, you know, obviously people know Italians love pizza. That's common sense, right? It's a very popular thing. So you come in with this burger place, you put it in this town that's got a huge Italian population, and so you start promoting pizzas. You start saying, okay, we're gonna start selling pizzas because we know Italians love pizza. They might not like the burgers as much, even though I don't think that's true at all. But let's just go with the analogy here. Let's assume these people think that a lot of the Italians aren't going to eat their burgers. They might want to eat pizza though, so they start throwing pizzas on the menu. But pizzas don't really fit the vibe of this burger place. The whole place is advertised around burgers. The name of the place is Burger Town. I know it's a stupid Call of Duty reference, but let's say the place is literally called Burger Town. It's all about the burgers. It's all about the burgers. But they start advertising the pizzas. They start throwing in pizza references everywhere. It just doesn't fit the vibe. It doesn't fit the feel. Just because they like pizza does not mean they're going to go there and be like, oh my God, I have to go to this place that has pizza. No, they're going to go to other places that likely do pizza better than you. They're not going to go to you just for the pizza. They don't care. They might go there for the burger, actually, because guess what? Not everyone eats the same food every single day. I'm sure you can understand where this analogy is going. It's basically just me saying zombies is great because it's zombies. It does not need all of these Warzone mechanics and features in order to make Warzone players want to play it. Warzone players don't only want to play things that are similar to Warzone, and that's it. That's not how most gamers work. They don't get so stuck into one sort of design or mechanic or HUD. They don't care. They'll play zombies if it's fun, if it's good. Yes, if it gives them camos for Warzone and levels up their weapons, that'll definitely help them as well. But they don't need the tone and the feel and the mechanics to be anything like Warzone for them to get invested in it at all. I know this video had a lot to it, but basically the overarching theme here is that each game and each specific mode within each game should stick to itself. It should be its own thing as much as it possibly can, and it shouldn't be affecting other modes or other games. It just shouldn't be. And I really hope Call of Duty can get back on that track, because I feel like that's what we had for such a long time, and it's what made Call of Duty so special. Every mode felt like an entirely new experience. I mean, go to Black Ops 2. Black Ops 2's campaign to multiplayer to zombies, they all feel so different. They feel so distinct, and that works so well in that way. And I do think they have done decent jobs at that in some of the recent Call of Duties. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit here and say it's been completely terrible all around. I'm not a complete COD hater. There's been stuff I've definitely loved over the past few years of Call of Duty, but there's definitely been a lot of issues as well, and I think they need to address them firsthand and really go back to making each game feel very unique, and then also the modes within each game feeling very unique as well. And we got to stop with the constant, affecting each other. We got to stop letting modes ruin other modes or letting games ruin other games. So we got to stop all that. We got to get back on track with this 3-year development cycle that Call of Duty has been known for, and I really hope they can get to that point soon. I think if Treyarch's next game is going to be coming out literally the year after Black Ops 6, it might cause some problems just for then. But once we get Infinity Ward's game after that, then probably Sledgehammer games after that, then probably Treyarch's next game after that, I think we'll be back on track finally, and hopefully each studio will be making their own game in their own modes, and they don't have any help from any other studio unless they absolutely need it for whatever reason. But hopefully they can make their own things. Infinity Ward / Hammer Trick makes their own game. Raven makes Warzone. Boom, we're done. Like, that's all you need, and I think that would be the perfect system, and I will be satisfied with the Call of Duty franchise, like basically fully satisfied at that point, assuming the games are still good. I also want to talk about one more thing here. There's been a lot of people that have been recommending the whole Call of Duty Online or COD Mobile style of COD games, where instead of having a new game every year, they just release one game and then they just update that continuously. And a lot of people say that'll fix these problems, but I kind of disagree. I think that'll actually cause way more problems than people are realizing, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I do think it is exciting getting a new game every year. I would be okay with them maybe skipping a year here or there, maybe doing one game every 2 years or something like that, but you can't do a system where you just drop one COD game and then just update that continuously, especially if it was like a free-to-play game fully. I mean, yeah, the campaigns and zombies maps would probably be paid, but like if you were to do that, you guys don't understand, the preservation of these games would be gone. I mean, look at Warzone. They deleted Warzone 1 off the face of the earth. Who's to say they wouldn't do that to the multiplayer? Like, you just wouldn't get that preservation that is known for Call of Duty. If I want to go back to Black Ops 4, which is a game that came out in 2018, if I want to go back to that right now and play it and get a bunch of lobbies, I can do that. And that's fun. That's awesome that I can play that game how it was back then, still the way it is. But if they did a COD Online sort of a thing where they just drop a Call of Duty game and it's get updated every single year, it would be a completely new game like every year. And how it was when it first came out, you would never be able to go back to that and play that. The same way you can't go back to Warzone 1 and play that now. You can't even go back to Warzone 2.0 how it was when it first came out, because nowadays it's nothing like that. I mean, obviously Warzone 2.0 when it came out was pretty bad, so I don't think anyone wants to go back to that anyways. But regardless, the preservation of these games is important to me. So I do like having a new COD title pretty frequently. I do enjoy the idea of each of them having their own sort of feel to it, and then each mode being very different within that. I think that works, and I want them to keep doing that. Just find a better cycle. That's all they got to do. Just find that consistent 3-year dev cycle, and we're good. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel and comment down below your thoughts on this topic. I will see you guys on the next one. Peace out.